In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I continue my discussion about the 2024 Value Electronics TV Shootout with three people who were there. So stick around.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. In this episode, I continue my discussion about the 2024 Value Electronics TV Shootout with three people who were instrumental in making it happen. First, we have Robert Zohn, owner of Value Electronics and the person who founded this event. Robert, how you doing?
Excellent. Thank you, Scott, for having me on tonight.
You bet. Glad to have you here. Next, we have Jason Dustal, who's a technical trainer at AV Pro Edge and the person who set up the system that we are going to be talking about. Hey, Justin, welcome back.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Robert. Hey, David, my friends. Long time no see. Thanks for having me.
We're all friends here. Yeah. And David Mackenzie, CEO of Fidelity in Motion, which is a compressionist company, and he was a Value Electronics Shootout judge. David, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back on.
You bet. So in part one of this discussion, we were talking about the Value Electronics 2024 TV Shootout, the OLEDs. There were several OLED TVs in competition, and they were evaluated separately from a set of three MiniLED backlit LCD TVs. Quite the mouthful. But that's what you get with LCD TVs, I'm afraid. So let's quickly go over what we talked about in the last part, just to make sure that everybody's on board. This was the 20th anniversary of the Shootout as a public event, right, Robert?
That is correct. Thank you. We started publicizing it nationwide in 2004, 20 years ago.
So this is a milestone.
Yes.
And one of the important point about it is that you bring together the flagship TVs from the various major manufacturers, put them next to each other, and calibrate them, very important, so that they're all showing their best. Feed them the same signal, which is Jason's responsibility.
Yes.
And have judges with forms that they can fill out to evaluate all the different performance characteristics of these TVs. Now, in part one, we talked about the OLEDs. Now we're going to talk about the mini LEDs. First, I want to make sure everybody knows that we had two calibrators who actually made sure these TVs were performing at their best. And we have a picture of them to show you. Dwayne Davis, known as D-Nice on AVS Forum, on the left. Jason is there in the middle with Robert. And then at the other end, Cecil Mead of Classy Tech Calibrations.
That's right.
And I think you'll agree with me, gentlemen, that they did a great job, huh?
Yep. Absolutely. Great guys, good friends. Very, this community is so tight, and amongst the calibrator community, these guys are very helpful. They're my tech support when I run into something funny. So yeah, they're instrumental to the event, and we certainly thank them. And what some people might not realize is, they don't show up the night before and calibrate the TVs, and then the event happens. They're there days and days. I've calibrated before for the event, and between travel and all the other things, I have to carve out a week to get this done. So really important to give those guys a shout out for spending so many days ahead of time and away from their families and away from their actual jobs to make the event go. So thank you so much, guys, for doing that this year. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we have a panel of judges who actually take a look at the TVs and evaluate their performance. And we have a picture of most of them anyway, in graphic number 2. Let's see. Robert, go over with me again who they are right to left quickly.
On the
left to right, sorry, left to right.
On the extreme left is Michael. Do you remember his? You have his.
Oh, Mike. Man, his name is hard to.
I specifically asked him to spell it for me phonetically. Mike Asadchu. Do you want to read
Asadchu?
Asadchu.
Okay, good. He's a calibrator.
He certainly
for
is.
Professional and consumer video, so he knows what he's doing.
You bet. And then we have John Rifamato, another level 3 ISF calibrator, certified. And then we have David Mackenzie.
A tall fellow.
Yes. And then is that Kenneth?
That's Kenneth, yep.
Kenneth Almestica.
Yes.
He's the senior director of technical operations at Paramount.
Yes. Right.
So he knows what he's looking at.
He calls himself, he tells me, I'm the film finisher. That's what he tells me.
The finisher, yeah.
Yeah. And then we have David Medina,
who is the director of encoding services at Warner Brothers Discovery.
Warner Brothers. That's right. And next to him is another famous calibrator. Tell me his name again.
Oh, Nilay Patel.
Yes. A very
who is a tech journalist, actually, a member of my tribe.
He's a journalist, yeah.
Yes.
But although I'm sure a fine calibrator as well.
Well, I think he's level 3 ISF certified also.
Oh,
yeah. And he's the founder and editor-in-chief of The Verge.
Yes, he is.
Which is a really well-known, well-respected tech site. I cite it all the time myself.
Thank you.
And then the two people that weren't there, Charlie Anderson, cinematographer.
Right. Yes.
And Richard Drutman, who is a writer, producer, and director for Triode Pictures.
Yes.
So these guys know what they're looking at. No question about it. Okay, so let's take a look at the competition of the mini LEDs. There were 3 of them. The LG 65 QN ED90 TUA.
Yes.
Oh, QNED. Okay, QNED, right. Which is QNED technology. It's LG's version of quantum dot LED backlit LCD. The N stands for nanocell. It's
that's right.
Their particular brand or technology that they use. The Samsung QN65, QN95D,
yes,
which is quantum dot LED backlit LCD, and the new Sony K65XR90, otherwise known as the Bravia 9, their flagship QLED TV. And take a look at those prices. Interestingly enough, the Samsung and Sony are very close to each other. $3,300 for the Samsung, $3,000 for the Sony. The LG is quite a bit cheaper, almost half as much, which I find kind of interesting.
One interesting thing, if you don't mind me interjecting here,
sure, of course.
I believe it's the first time that LG has used a PVA LCD panel.
Yes, that's correct.
Instead of IPS.
That's correct.
Which means that the characteristics of those panels is IPS's strength was always that the off-axis viewing angle quality for color was superior to VA, but the contrast ratio suffered. So it's with LCD, it's like you kind of have to pick the one that's best for your needs. They can't ever get all those things ideal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's quite surreal actually to see a VA-based LCD, a VA-based LG LCD TV.
Yes. That's a very good point, and you're exactly right. You can have good contrast or you can have good off-axis performance. You cannot have both with an LCD.
That's right.
Generally speaking.
Yes.
And then also in that list there, we want to say again that these TVs were being compared with a reference monitor, the Sony BVM HX3110, a 31-inch professional coloring monitor, which uses dual layer, I should say, LCD, and it costs 10 times as much, $34,000. But it's what professionals use to color grade and evaluate the content as it's being created. So that's what they see when they're creating the content. The TV that you have at home should reflect that or be as close to that as possible, which is why it's sitting there in this evaluation.
And unless that, I hasten to add to that, unless you've picked the correct modes on your TV or ideally had it calibrated, it will not be coming anywhere close to what the colorist sees in the suite.
Right.
The preset modes, the cinema mode or filmmaker mode, or
Those are
different
good.
brands call it different things. They're a lot better than they used to be. But it's really important to stress that you cannot just plug the TV in and let it run, because you'll be seeing a very distorted picture if you do that.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this episode, because that's one thing that you did at the Shootout was evaluate out-of-box performance.
That's right.
But not in this case. In the case of the 3 LED TVs we saw there, they were all fully calibrated.
Correct.
So quickly, let's take a look at the system configuration. We looked at this in part 1. Jason, you were responsible for putting all of this together with an 8x8 matrix switcher to be able to send any of the source devices to any or all of the TVs. And we were very careful with the cabling to make sure that didn't introduce any differences one device to the other. I think it's a beautiful job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just insanely important for a live event like this for the signal to stay stable and for the correct signal to get to the correct displays. And having multiple sources, multiple displays of different brands. Sometimes there's some EDID stuff you have to worry about, but that's why I brought our flagship switch, the Axion 8, because it has all the bells and whistles to scale and to manage EDIDs and all kinds of other cool toys too. But this was the switch that we chose specifically for this event.
So on the inputs, you had an Apple TV 4K, you had a Meridio test pattern generator, you had an Oppo Blu-ray player and a Magnetar Blu-ray player, Ultra HD Blu-ray player, both of those. The Magnetar trying to fill the void of that Oppo left when they exited that business. Right. Everybody still regrets that. And an OTA tuner, an over-the-air tuner, which I thought was brilliant, to be able to see what's called next-gen TV, ATSC 3.0. And Robert, you were saying, and I think Jason mentioned as well in the last episode, how great that looks.
It's exceptionally great. They have a new algorithm for compression that is much more efficient. So it doesn't create compression artifacts as much. They also, the minimum resolution is 1080p, and all of the content is HDR wide color gamut.
Even at 1080p?
Yes, even at 1080p, HDR wide color.
Wow, that's so great. And it's in, 70% of the U.S. markets now?
Yes, it is.
Something like that.
So it's across America,
Yeah. So get an antenna, over-the-air antenna, which isn't that expensive, doesn't have to be that expensive. And if your TV doesn't have a tuner, you can get one. Jason, you were mentioning you found one for $30 or something.
Yeah, they're everywhere now. And for those who've been around long enough, remember we had our old TVs that could not do HD, so we were all running out and buying external tuner boxes.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them were free from the government, I think, at some point.
In the beginning, they were.
Yeah. So it's it's very, very affordable. Run out, grab yourself a tuner. The one particular one we were using, I apologize for escaping the brand escapes my mind, but it also was a DVR. So for somebody who was watching over the air broadcast, they could record their favorite shows and watch them later. And
it actually has storage, local storage in it.
Yes.
And I don't know the exact antenna that Robert was using there for the event, but just a basic ATSC 3.0 capable antenna plus the little tuner box, and your off-air stuff looks awesome.
It does. This was a brand called Zapper Box, and it's a dual tuner DVR over the air.
Wow.
So it has 2 tuners built in, so you can watch one show and record another show at the same time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, let's quickly recap the judging criteria that were the same for the OLEDs and the mini LED backlit LCD TVs.
Yes.
We have graphic 5 that shows the scoring sheet, the ultimate scoring sheet. Oh, no, that's the more detailed one.
That's one of many. One
of
One
many.
page.
David was telling us in the last episode that that there were many pages like this because you were evaluating HDR in a bright room and HDR in a dark room. And here are the overall categories.
Right.
SDR reference, bright room, HDR general, dark scenes, bright scenes, and streaming.
That's right.
And all of those scores derived out of these many, many pages of more specific criteria like black level, shadow detail, color accuracy, all these different parameters that these judges, these golden-eyed judges,
yes,
looked at these TVs and evaluated. And in the case, I guess in both cases, the OLEDs and the mini LEDs, among the things you were looking at was off-axis performance, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm sure that the OLEDs did better in that, generally speaking, than the LCDs.
Yes.
Just a little.
Just a little.
More than a little.
No fault to anybody. It's just the characteristics of those technologies.
Yes,
so it's not like one brand was way better. It's technology based. Just so
it is. Yeah. That's exactly right. So, then we have a couple pictures of the actual process as it was happening. The TVs lined up and people looking at them. And here you can clearly see the one on the right is very washed out. So that must have been an LCD TV. Because you're looking at it.
That actually brings up a point. Like sometimes in years past, where the event's been streamed online, people will watch and look in the comments, and they'll make comparisons, and they'll say that one looks pink or that one looks green.
I know, it doesn't mean
it's the way the camera picks things up. Right. I can assure you, in real life, none of that's the case. They all look pretty similar.
Right.
It's worth stating every time. But
Thank you.
Good point.
Yes.
Good point. By the way, speaking of which, you didn't live stream it this year, right?
Just the opening remarks. But they shot video all day long, and they're making about 8 different videos.
Oh, good. And they'll be on your YouTube channel?
Yes, they will be.
Okay.
Yes.
By the way, we didn't mention it in part 1, but we're putting the URL for Value Electronics website in the show notes, and you can go see a lot of coverage of this, and you'll have links to your YouTube channel there, I'm sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so going on to the next graphic, number 8, we can see people pointing out things.
Yep.
And I've been involved in this for a number of years. I wasn't there this year, but it's a long day of looking at stuff and deciding how am I going to judge that, and it's really quite a thing. So let's take a look at the results. That's graphic 9, and we can see the cumulative result of all this judging. Mm-hmm. And we can see here, Robert, tell us what we're looking at.
So this is the summary of all the judges' ballots added together. The bold type represents the individual category for each TV that won that category. Mm-hmm. So what I always tell people is we pick the winner of the best on all categories, but that may not be the best TV for your use case. So use the same ballot and say, well, I have a budget. So just pick the TVs that match your budget and cross off the other one. Mm-hmm. Or you may say, I have a very bright room. I need high peak lumens. So you look at that category, pick the one that's best for your use case. Mm-hmm. You might say, I like color fidelity. I'm a freak about color fidelity. So again, use the ballot to find out which is the best for each element, and then match that to your use case and your liking.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, exactly. Your mileage may vary, or your preference may vary, more to the point. But this is the cumulated result of all the judging and averaged into all these different categories.
That's right.
And we find that the Sony Bravia 9, as it's colloquially known, is 1/10 of a point more, got 1/10 of a point more overall than the Samsung QN95D. So as we said in part one, one of the trends that we see in this shootout year after year after year is that TVs get better and better and better, and the difference between their performance gets narrower and narrower and narrower.
Yes, yes, yes.
So interestingly here, though, the LG, that came out significantly less. I mean, not horribly, but still, you can see that it did not take any of the categories.
It still did very well, and considering its price point, very respectable score.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
It's half as
Thank
much
you.
as the other two.
Yeah.
Right.
Very good
So
point.
if budget is really a concern, you're not going to go wrong with the LG.
Yeah, it's not
Would
going
you
to
agree?
suck. Yeah.
That's correct. That is correct. Very true. Very true.
So interestingly, though, Sony had a sunny day, as it happens. They swept the shootout with both the OLED and the Mini LED LCD TV, which congratulations, Sony. And it's not terribly surprising to me. Sony makes a fine product. No question about it.
They're unique because, they make the cameras, they make the reference monitor, they make the consumer
That's right.
TV, and they really understand the pipeline, which I think gives them a little bit of an edge. But to see these
would
other
agree.
brands, to see the other brands like this close is really special.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a fair to add to that. Yes, Sony has its fingers in many pies, but they're still playing to the same standards as everyone else.
Thank you. Excellent point.
The point is, of course, to go to D65 white, or at least for
That's
the
right.
purposes of accuracy and high quality viewing. The goal is to match D65 white point and to hit the right color targets and everything like that. So it's not that experience in various different industry sectors, I'm sure, is beneficial to them. There's no question about that. But the goal, the shared goal, is the same.
Good point.
and they hit it very well. So those were the results of the TV shootout. Now, that all happened on August 3rd, one day. Two of these evaluations, each with 3 TVs, took a very long time, I'm sure. That was a long day for you.
I think it was about a 9-hour day.
Man.
Yeah.
In the dark.
In the dark, yes.
And it was, unfortunately, it was a rainy, so it's not like you could go outside and, reset your eyes and catch your breath. It was really rainy and really humid. And so it was nice to be inside in the dark with the air conditioner. But yeah, you're right. It's quite the day. And, Robert, so kind to provide snacks and drinks and lunch and,
Yes.
and we were all so busy. So yeah, it's a long day, but you know how the old saying about, having fun and time passing by, it's a great time.
Yeah. But then there was a second day. You did spend some time on that the next day, Sunday, August 4th.
That's right.
Where you took other examples of the 6 TVs in competition, the 3 OLEDs and the 3 mini LEDs, in larger sizes.
Right.
And you stuck those next to each other. Robert, tell us a little bit about that exercise.
So we took the largest screen size for all of the same 6 TVs that were in day one, and we put them butt up against each other on the same center line in their best picture mode out of the box with no calibration, so that we can calculate and evaluate them, how they can perform out of the box. It was
Which
a
is
very
a very
successful
good-
day.
It's
Yeah.
a very good exercise because I would wager that most consumers, when they buy a TV,
That's right.
are not going to get it calibrated.
You would win that bet.
Yeah. And, just to point out too, they're not just plugged in and turned on. People say these days, and they're 100% true, that TVs are pretty good out of the box, and they're 100% true, but not plug and play. You still have to do some things to them.
Right.
We have to pick the most accurate picture mode. We have to turn off energy savings. We have to turn off all the motion shenanigans. Yeah. So after some very basic adjustments, taking it about energy savings, turning off motion, picking a good picture mode, that was it. And surprisingly, some of them were, you could tell, even if your eyes weren't super trained, you could tell that they were off compared to the reference monitor.
Yes.
But for being out of the box best picture mode,
they were good.
They were pretty darn good.
Yes.
I think the point of the hardest thing is being able to tell the consumer which picture mode to pick and what to turn off, and that doesn't get any easier.
Right.
It's frustrating in the sense that, like you say, some of them, provided you're in the right picture mode, are really accurate. Out of the this phrase "out of the box" is dangerous because, not, as you said, it's not totally.
It's not exactly out of the box.
The whole point is basically for this day was to look at them in the mode that could be chosen that wouldn't involve spending money in calibration or putting a probe against the screen. And it's I mean, we have things like filmmaker mode, and that makes things easier, but it's there's a lot of wasted potential, and there are a lot of TVs across the world that'll be sitting there in the deceptively named standard picture mode, which is absolutely does not follow a standard at all.
No,
it's tinted blue. It's got all the white black clipping, the sharpening, the noise reduction, the motion on. So I mean, a lot of the battle is just getting the consumer to put the TV into the hands-off mode. And I think it's fair to say that once you've done that, these days you're certainly in the right ballpark. Yes. Unfortunately, there's no easy way to convey this to the consumer. And the only way to know for sure what the display is doing is either to compare it to a reference like we did today, or put a probe on it. So it's a bit of a quagmire.
It's no different in any other hobby where performance is so critical, but squeezing out that last 20% is the most expensive part. So basic test patterns, shameless plug, meridio.com, you can download some free test patterns.
That's right.
We have some amazing tools out there like the Spears and Munsell disc.
Yes.
So somebody could do some very good damage to the TV once they plug it in, turn it on. But David's exactly right. Picking the right mode can be confusing because everyone calls it something different.
Yes. I normally say to people, choose if there's a mode called cinema or movie, choose that.
Yes. And another good rule of thumb is if it has if the control is called enhancer or dynamic, it's probably up to
turn it off.
Turn it off. Yes.
Turn it off. I call those bonus features. Turn off all the bonus features.
Yep. All the quote unquote enhancement features.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my personal plug, but we work very closely with our clients to make sure they're using the right picture mode, and things like light sensors are shut off.
Yeah.
So
good.
Well,
any good retailer or installer will do that.
That's right.
And you guys are certainly good at what you do, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
So what was the end result? We took a look at these 6 TVs in larger picture sizes. And here we are taking a look. I love this next picture particularly. It was a really beautiful one by Mark Jessamy of Ken Werner, who's a journalist. He wasn't a judge. He's a journalist, a colleague of mine.
That's right.
And he just looks very intent. I just love this picture.
Thank you.
And there were some journalists there who were reporting on the event, not participating as judges, although he certainly could have.
Yes.
So what were the results? The Sony A95L OLED, the LG G4 OLED, and the Samsung S95D OLED.
Yes.
What do you know? The top 3 choices were OLED.
As it should be.
As it should be. As what I always say, if I'm going to choose between an OLED and an LCD, I'm going to choose an OLED.
Yes.
except in the rare case where you need to be competing against tremendous ambient brightness.
Yes.
Like the sun?
Like the sun. Outdoor TVs, I would not put an OLED in an outdoor TV.
No. Here, David and I, we live walking distance to each other and in downtown St. Petersburg. And I've been to many condos here, floor to ceiling windows and just beautiful, 34, 40th floor type places. And you're right, Scott, to kind of piggyback off your point. I'm not going to put an OLED in a room like that. I'm going to go for a super high performance LCD panel.
Although on that note, QD OLED has started to chip away at that.
Yep, that's a good point. It rips.
Restriction. So it's not as far apart
Thank
as
you.
it used to be. It's
And
not
I was
like
going
a plasma versus LCD thing.
I was going to bring up the same point. In addition to that, so QD OLEDs are much brighter,
Right.
with better color saturation as well and color volume. But in addition to that, mini LEDs have jumped up tremendously.
And again, to make sure everybody understands, mini LED refers to the fact that the LEDs behind the LCD panel are smaller. There are more of them.
Yes.
In a greater number of dimming zones.
Yes.
So that improves the performance of an LCD quite a bit.
Yes.
The thing that was interesting about Sunday was, yes, the first three, the three winning displays were all the OLEDs. And as you said, that's not surprising. It is a superior performing display technology.
That's
right. But the reason for, at least from my perspective, the reason for them being better was actually not the contrast performance. Like, don't get me wrong, the OLEDs have superior contrast performance, but because we were looking in a non-pitch black room, like there was some sun outside and the windows were, it was a dim room, but not a pitch black room. That's the sort of environment where the LCD-based TVs, the limitations really become apparent. Yeah. But what struck me so much was that the color accuracy in the best preset modes out of the box on the three OLEDs were much better than the LCDs. And I can't think of any reason why that should be the case. If I would, like I said, I would expect the contrast performance to be poorer in the LCD TVs. But yeah, I mean, what we kept seeing in those tests was that let me just consult my note here. The LCDs had more of in their most accurate out of the box preset mode, had a kind of blue tint to them all. And I imagine, obviously you can calibrate the grayscale and all of those and mitigate that. But the LCDs.
But why would they all have that have a tendency, a bias toward that?
It makes them appear. It makes them look brighter.
True. If they have a blue emphasis, that does make them appear brighter. But the fact that the best preset picture mode had that as well, I would expect it out of standard or vivid or one of those modes. But cinema mode.
Right, exactly. They should all be trying to hit these 65. So I don't know what the reason for that is.
Maybe a coating or a filter, perhaps.
Or maybe, it's who knows. I'd love to know the answer to that. It made me revisit some views of mine for a while, and this is probably the result of, any display I'm looking at is accurate. I've calibrated it. But I've long been of the view that, the biggest, like I said, the biggest challenge is just getting the average person's not going to pay to have their TV calibrated, right? The enthusiasts are. The biggest battle that we can hope to win is to get the more and more average users to improve the performance, the color accuracy of the TV they have at home for free, to pick the best preset mode.
That's right.
And I was of the view that once you've done that, pretty much any display these days, it's going to be putting out reasonably accurate color of white, reasonably accurate grayscale and everything else, to the extent that it's not going to seriously change like the feel, the mood, the emotions of the content. But I take that back because some of the clips we looked at, one of them I believe was Dr. Sleep, which is, correct me if I'm wrong here, I've not seen it. It's a prequel or a sequel to The Shining?
Correct.
It's a sequel to The Shining.
Right. Sequel.
And there was a scene where they're sitting at this bar in the big old house, and on the accurate display, so that's the Sony BVM monitors and the OLEDs. The feel of that scene was it had a kind of greeny, saturated green feel to it. Like it really did feel like you could feel the oldness of the set, the surroundings. But on the LCDs that were had the more blue tint, it was a very different feeling I got from it. So what I'm saying is that I've been too lenient on uncalibrated displays, and you have to get your TV calibrated. Sorry, or like I said, also, the only way to know what it's doing is to put a probe on it. At which point, you might as well calibrate the thing anyway.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, so there's still work to do in the LCD space or at least in these models for improving the best preset mode. On the other hand, the OLEDs, some had issues that you would need calibrated out, but some of these are really close.
Well, this leads directly to a point that we made in part one, which is one of the important parts of this shootout is not only that it helps consumers pick a good TV to buy, it also encourages manufacturers to improve their product. And here is an example of LCD manufacturers, an opportunity for LCD manufacturers to improve their product in their preset picture modes.
That's right.
So, well, gentlemen, this has been a tremendously interesting conversation. I want to thank you both very much, all three of you, in fact, for 2 episodes of really interesting discussion.
Yes.
So what, got any final thoughts? Jason, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think as bandwidth requirements get to be more and more, we're going to start using some HDMI 2.1 switches and infrastructure, I think, in the near future, maybe even next year. 4K 120 is becoming more and more popular every month, I feel like. So bandwidth requirements from my end are going to be more capable switches, more capable cables, and just making sure those systems stay up and running. But, I'm excited for the future. There's some really cool technologies on the horizon that we're going to see in some bigger sizes here pretty soon. And we're going to see some really cool technologies in smaller sizes, I think, here in the next couple of years. And, we have many, many, many years to come of doing these types of events and having a lot of fun with it.
Thank you.
Sounds great. David?
Did you ask for 2 thoughts, or was I?
You can give me 2 thoughts, sure.
The number one thought I have from these events is we are so lucky to have LG Display. Because if it wasn't for them producing TV-sized OLED panels, I don't know what this industry would look like. Maybe someone else would have done it. But for the longest time, it was LG Display alone making the panels that went into these emissive displays. Now we have Samsung Display as well doing QD.
That's right.
Which is excellent competition, and we are really lucky to have them both. Because when Panasonic left the plasma space, there was a while where the choice was between LCD TVs and OLED TVs were not performing very well in all categories at that point.
And they weren't very big.
And crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Right. And I shudder to think what the industry could have looked like if it hadn't been for those two.
Good point.
And the other thought, we're lucky to have the manufacturers we have. They're doing a really good job, and compared to even 10 years ago, this stuff's better. So
right on, man.
The winner is the consumer.
There you go. I like it.
There you go.
And Robert, final word.
Thank you. So one thing that I found kind of interesting is that most of the Hollywood studios and post-production houses have already bought or are buying this 4,000 nit dual cell mastering monitor. And they're going to be making movies graded at 4,000 nits. You're going to see them come out. So that's when you'll probably have more of an interest in a brighter OLED, which we will see every year they get brighter, and possibly even one of the QN95D Samsung or the Bravia 9.
The Bravia 9 advertises 4,000 nits now.
It almost goes to 4,000.
Okay.
Not quite.
Which
But
means
what's also
if you
interesting-
have a movie mastered at 4,000 nits, you
Yes.
don't need to apply tone mapping, or not very
That's
much.
right. So you're going to want to have a Bravia 9 or a QN95D when these new movies come out. And the Bravia 9 in particular, with its new second generation of the very famous backlight master drive, which is the same exact technology that's in that monitor.
No,
BVM.
It's quite a bit different in the sense
No, it's
that,
not.
Yeah.
Well, the BVM is a dual cell LCD, so it can
Right.
control the contrast on every pixel. But I think what you're saying is that there are some engineering similarities between what's
No, they're controlling every mini LED on the Bravia 9, and they're controlling the luminance level as well on every single mini LED. When I thanked the engineers for adding more local dimming zones, they answered me, "We don't care about the local dimming zones. We're controlling each mini LED. It doesn't matter how many. We don't use the local dimming zones."
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could leave us with this, sorry, Robert, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you still?
Please.
I just want to give a nice round of applause and a congratulations to Robert for 20
Thank
years
you
of this
so
event.
much. Thank you.
None of us would be here talking about these things without his
Absolutely
efforts
right.
and without his enthusiasm and his warm heart and his kindness.
Thank
and
you.
Wendy and Leanne and everybody that helps with this event. It's a ton of work, and the Zohn family.
Yes.
We really want to put them in the spotlight and thank them for everything that they do.
Thank you
Couldn't
so
agree more.
very much. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more, and it's such an important event.
Thank you.
Yeah, really is, which is why I like featuring it
really
on my show every year, because it's so important. There's a shot of the Shootout page on Value Electronics website, which we will certainly put into the show notes so that you can go check it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here today and being with us to go into some deep details here on the 2024 Value Electronics TV Shootout. My guests have been Robert Zohn, owner of Value Electronics, Jason Dustal, technical trainer at AV Pro Edge and the system designer for the Shootout, and David Mackenzie,
Beautiful.
CEO of Fidelity in Motion, a compressionist and one of the judges for the TV Shootout. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
And thank you so much. Thank you.
So, thus endeth our coverage of this year's Shootout. Now, if you have a question for me, you can send it along to htg@twit.tv, and I will answer as many as I can right here on the show. And as always, we thank you for your support of the TWiT network with your membership in Club TWiT, which lets you access all the shows that TWiT produces in their video form and lets you come into the Discord channel and hang out with like-minded twits.
Beautiful.
So until next time, geek out.